On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1975. We're going to be taking a look at David Gates, and he's going to be performing If. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So this performance and the song is quite a short one. It's just over 2.5 minutes in length, but we will approach this as we normally do. And I have isolated David's vocals, so we can look at that in a little bit more detail. As you can see, I've got the guitar out as well, so we'll have a spotlight on that element too. But let's see how David gets on.
If a picture paints 1,000 words, then why can't I paint you? The words will never show the you I've come to know. If a face could launch 1,000 ships, then where am I to go? There's no one home but you. You're all that's left me to. And when my love for life is running dry, you come and pour yourself on me. If a man could be 2 places at one time, I'd be with you tomorrow and today, beside you all the way. If the world should stop revolving, spinning slowly down to die, I'd spend the end with you. And when the world was through, then one by one the stars would all go out. Then you and I would simply fly away.
And there we have it. I mean, because it's a short video, we can watch it the whole way through, and I think that's the only way to watch it because of just the way this has been put together dynamically. And I mean that across the board. Instrumentally, we've got, faultless playing throughout from David, but just faultless playing throughout the instrumentation in general, because the strings there are placed in so perfectly. We've got another guitar that's been layered in there that is just, doing very simplistic strums of the chords, exaggerating them, but it's just a great mix as well. So we are going to be looking at the guitar, and then we'll jump into the vocals, because the vocals are a huge part of this that just bring it all together. But when we're talking about the guitar and how well it's being played, it's really important, because even though I say the guitar's layered in there just under, it's definitely in there clearly, but it's just under that second guitar in the background. The strings just swell in and just fill in the sound perfectly, but it's all under the vocal. Nothing's taking the limelight away from the vocal, which is why it's so great, because the vocal's so great. But going into the guitar, which I will make it full screen so you guys can see, we've got this perfect picking going on the whole time, and I really like the way we've got two Bs going on. We've got the B that's being fretted with the first finger on the 4th fret of the G string, and then the open B string. By the way, this isn't going to be an instructional video, as I always say. We're just going to be covering the basics, or just looking at some of the things going on the fretboard. And getting back to these two Bs, obviously, because we've got two Bs ringing out, it's really going to fill out that sound. And when I say about the two Bs ringing out, technique is a huge part of this, because when David picks through those strings, they're all ringing out perfectly. So he's just got perfect technique on that fretboard. The alternative is, if he wasn't fretting the notes correctly and we had kind of buzzing going on, you can hear how straight away it's in your face, because it's so stripped back. Everything else that is going on, or literally anything that's going on in this performance, is under the spotlight because it is so stripped back. So yeah, that kind of playing is not going to cut it. So you've got to make sure that you've got all of those notes nice and cleanly. Then we have this rundown. A, yeah, into an E7th, and actually there's a little run through that chord at the end, I believe, but anyway, yeah, it's not exact, so don't quote me on it all, but just getting that kind of feel to it is really important, playing dynamically, so that when he's playing through it, and we've got it's really soft, and you might get a note or two just to jump out like that, really subtly emphasizing that little rundown that we have. And when we get down to the E7th at the end, it's all really lightly played. He's not kind of going, and being too over the top, because dynamically that's just not going to work either. But there are so many subtle details going on here with the guitar playing that you also have to take into consideration. He's singing at the same time, so all of this that's going on is subconscious, and he's applying all of this dynamic appreciation while doing another thing at the same time. So yeah, it's massively impressive. But let's get into this vocal. I've got the piano up on screen as well, so that we have a reference point for the range, the notes that are going on here. And this is another thing that does strike you. When you don't have a reference point, it sounds like David's hitting a lot of high notes here. But then when you do have a reference point, you can see exactly the notes that are going on. And they aren't actually really that high. It's the way that David delivers his voice that makes it sound like they're higher than they actually are. But let's just have a listen.
If a picture paints 1,000 words, then why can't I paint you?
So, with this vocal, he's keeping all of these notes relevant to each other. And when I say that, what I mean is when he goes lower, he keeps that light head voice sound to it, rather than going into the note as you would do with your chest voice, because it's really sitting down there going na 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 na. It's a note that you could put a lot of body into if you wanted to, but he keeps this whole vocal consistent. So that's why this na and going na, the second version sounds higher. Well, obviously it's not, it's the same note, but it gives you that illusion of when he then starts to ascend in range, it just sounds really, really high, because the low notes sound higher than they normally would do if you're just singing it in standard chest voice. But let me take down the accompaniment and we'll have a listen through a little bit more just to this isolated vocal.
If a picture paints 1,000 words, then why can't I paint you?
and the pitch accuracy. I mean, he's so accurate all the time, but crucially, he's pretty much always spot on and a little bit below the note, which we call flat, but it's not an insult to anybody singing. Being flat means under the note. As we can see here, he's a little bit below, a little bit below, a little bit below, and then, bang on the A3. And he's got this really subtle vibrato in there, but the important point of being slightly below the note is that it gives it a more relaxed sound. It's not as dramatic as kind of going above the note. When it's sharp, it always sounds a little bit dramatic, and being sharp is when you're slightly higher than where the note is.
The words will never show.
And just look out for these slides that we have. Again, sliding's going to give it that laid back approach rather than being regimented na 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 and kind of more staccato, just hitting notes with gaps in between. We're sliding up and down, legato, na, and glissando, which is sliding, but it elongates the phrases.
The you I've come to know.
Even there, really subtle. To know. That was actually all joined up. To know. So, yeah, really subtle. And, that happened really quickly. You didn't really hear the slide, but, it's really subtle.
If a face could launch 1,000 ships, then where am I to go? There's no one home but you.
And we'll just take in, from a range perspective, the E3, which is where we just went down to.
You're all that's left me to.
And we can see on screen, me. That's now an octave higher. So he's just hit the E4. Again, that's going to fly under your radar that he's covering an octave within a few notes here, going from the E3 to the E4, just really quickly. But because the E4 doesn't sound really high, because he's making the low notes sound high, it kind of gives it that tonal consistency. And yeah, you're not kind of taken aback by this sudden increase by an octave. Whereas in other songs, it might be more dramatic, but David's got the kind of range where he can go up by over an octave. So he's still not close to his high note of the song. A lot of singers, that would be their high note. That would be their octave change from the verse into the chorus, and that'll be a lot. But obviously, David's got a lot of range in his pocket that he can pull out at any time.
And when my love for life is running dry.
So there, that G sharp 4. Now we're in the male tenor range. And, we have got this lighter head voice quality to it. So it's not that he's hitting notes in the male tenor range in chest voice, but that would be just so out of place to do that anyway with this kind of performance. If you went, na, 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 started kind of forcing his voice up. Not that he would force it. It hit it in a na, na. He'd kind of have control of it if he wanted to use that part of his voice. But of course, he's placing this dynamically exactly where it needs to be. So that's why he's keeping this all really light in head voice, and again, giving the low notes that head voice quality to them. So the G sharp 4, when we're looking at the male tenor range, we've got the G and then sharp is here, and that's the G sharp 4. Top end of the male tenor range, by the way, but in this kind of lighter head voice configuration. And we know that before we hit that E3, so it means that we were actually down here. So already a hell of a lot of range going on, because we've got over the octave. The octave would be here, the E4, and then the G sharp.
You come and pour yourself on me.
And just to point out the inaccuracy of this vocal, because when you're watching this performance, at no point do you think, oh, that was out of tune, oh, that was really flat of the note. You just listen to it and it sounds perfect. This performance, to me, when I first heard it, I just thought this is what music is. It's an art form, and you really get that appreciation with this performance because of the strings, everything that's just perfectly in place. And then you just add David's voice as that cherry on top. It's just perfectly in place the whole time. And then obviously if you play guitar, you can appreciate this on another level because you've got the perfect playing going the whole way through. But it's the inaccuracy that makes it perfect. Because yeah, music doesn't conform to these lines. You can see how flat we are from the F sharp 4. We're almost halfway to the F4 below, which will be a wrong note. But this is the point. This is just expression. And then we are flat of the E4. And then, here you can see we're bang on the A sharp 3. But it's this mixing and matching of notes that means you get the expression in there. Because all of these notes here, if I take it back and we listen to it, you're not going to question them because you're listening to the emotion, not the notes.
You come and pour yourself on me.
I mean, the thing is, even listening to the isolated vocal where you don't have a reference point of the instrumentation in the background, it still sounds great. Which is the whole point, that, once you start trying to put notes where they conform to 440 hertz tuning, equal temperament, they're going to sound a little bit weird. But when you just hear a great singer singing just their voice, it always just sounds great, even though you still don't have that reference point.
Spinning slowly down the dive, I'd spend the end with you. And when the world was through.
I love the way that he just floats up to that E4. Actually, he just floats up to all of these notes in this tenor range.
Then one by one, the stars would all go out.
And again, it's that totally relaxed vocal technique. He's kind of floating up there. It's just great to listen to, and he's just got such an easy to listen to tone. I mean, it's so balanced, his voice from bottom to top in this performance.
Then you and I would simply fly away.
And there we have it, that last note, the A4, by the way, top end male tenor range. Again, in that light head voice. And this is, really light to the point where it feels like it could kind of almost break at any point. So you get that vulnerability in the voice that is kind of, and it sounds like it could almost do that, where it disappears into nothing, but he just keeps those vocal cords connected. So it's probably like the lightest sound that you will hear connecting that note, because obviously any lighter and you wouldn't have the pressure of the air keeping the vocal cords together, or enough compression in the voice in order to keep those vocal cords together. They would split apart. So, but that's it. It's exactly where it needs to be. That's the point, that this isn't something that you'd say, oh wow, he was lucky at the end there that his vocal cords didn't separate. His voice was exactly where it needed to be to get the emotional response from that sound of the voice being so close to kind of breaking apart. And again, it's not something that David is going to be doing, that he's singing and constantly trying to think of, oh, how much air do I need? How much compression do I need so my vocal cords don't split apart? He's just singing this with the emotion of the song. And these are all the things that happen. It's almost, well, I was going to say collateral damage. It's not the right term for it. But things that happen as a result of singing with emotion are these kinds of things. So, technique wise, you'll say, oh, right, this is happening, but it's a byproduct of singing with emotion, that he just hit that exact balance of where his voice needed to be to hit the right emotion, because he was singing it with the emotion. He wasn't trying to do it the other way around, which is kind of how you have to explain things when you're referring to the voice. But great singers do it all just with a sense of where they want to be emotionally, not thinking about techniques to achieve it, but just doing it naturally. And that's why great voices are great to listen to, because they sound effortless and you can just appreciate the vocal and the emotion of the vocal when you're listening to it. So again, another great performance to take a look at, especially one that is so stripped back, because I mean, these kinds of performances are so difficult to execute live to this kind of level, because there are so many potential things that can go wrong. But when you're talking about consummate professionals like David, you can just sit back and appreciate it, because at no point are you worried that, he might not be able to hit a note, or that he'll mess up his playing or anything like that. You can just sit back and enjoy this level of professional ability, but just artistic ability as well. So yeah, fantastic performance. Thank you guys for requesting this particular performance for me to take a look at. As always, keep the suggestions and requests coming in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!